thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. Let's start a new Masechta today. Masechta Megillah. Because of our learning, we should have the base of Mikdash immediately and Refuah Shleima for all those that need, and Yechiel Nassim ben Sarah, and Aaron David Alevi ben Menucha Lester, and Avram Rafal ben Sarah. Okay. Let's begin right away. Beis Amid Aleph. Megillah Nikreis. B'Yud Aleph Yud Beis, B'Yud Gimel, B'Yud Dal, B'Tesvav. The Megillah Esther could be read on the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, or 15th, Leipachas V'Leyaser. Not earlier than the 11th and not later than the 15th. Now, we know that we have to read the Megillah on Purim. So Purim is the 14th, and Shushan Purim is the 15th. But it turns out that in certain situations, they're able to read it earlier. As we'll see, it's part of the original Takana. So the Mishnah goes through these days when they actually work out. So it starts off with Krachin Hamakafen Chaima Mimais Yeshua ben Nun. The cities that are surrounded by a wall from the days of Yeshua ben Nun, Kern B'Tesvav. The Gemara is going to discuss why specifically from the days of Yeshua ben Nun, which means that even if today they don't have a wall, but they were surrounded by a wall back then, they're going to read on the 15th of Adar. Kfarim v'ayaris gedolos Kern b'Yadalet. The other cities, large cities that didn't have that wall, they are reading on the 14th. Okay, so now we have the 15th and the 14th taken care of. We still don't know the 13th, 12th, and 11th. However, what could happen is that the Kfarim, those cities or villages, the villages, they could read on an earlier day, which is called Yom HaKnisa. Yom HaKnisa are the days that the villagers would go to the big cities. And they would do that twice a week. They would do it on Monday and Thursday because that's when the courts were there and that's when the stores and shops were open. So Kate said, how does it work out? So Chali is Yudalad B'Sheni. Let's say the 14th of Adar is a Monday. Okay. Monday is a day when they would go to the city. So Kfarim Vayars Gedelos Karim by Bayayim. The cities, the villages, the big cities that did not have a wall, they would read on the Monday, which is the 14th. And Shushan Purim would be on Tuesday, which is the 15th. That's just like an introduction to the complications that it's going to say. It gives you first the obvious case. However, let's say the 14th falls on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So then, the villagers, they'll be able to read the Megillah on the 13th and the 12th. Why? The 13th, if it was on a Tuesday, so then they'll do it on the day before, which is, if the 14th is a Tuesday, so they'll do it the day before on the Monday. That would be the 13th. And if the 14th is a Wednesday, then they'll do it on 2 days before, which is the 12th. And the big cities will read it on either Tuesday or Wednesday, which is the actual 14th. And Mekafas Chaim will be on Shushan Purim. Yeah, we don't have that concept of Shushan Purim, of Mekafas Chaim going to other cities. That we don't have, that we don't find. Okay, so we have basically the 15th, the 14th, the 13th, and the 12th, possibly. Chaliyas Erev Shabbos. Let's say the 14th falls out on a Friday. So Kfar Makdim Aliyam HaKnisa. So they'll read it the day before, the villages, because they'll go into the city. That's where they'll be able to hear the Megillah when they go into the city. So they'll read it on the Yom HaKnisa on the Thursday, which would be the 13th. And the big cities, and this is a little surprising, and the walled cities together will read it on Friday, on the 14th. They won't read it on Shabbos. Why won't the walled cities read it on Shabbos? Shushan Purim is Shabbos. Well, we have a problem with reading it on Shabbos. That problem is the carrying Gzer de Rabbah. Remember, there was a concern that you may end up carrying the Megillah, take it to a Chacham. So everyone will read it on Erev Shabbos. They call it a Purim like that. I think they call it Purim Meshulish because the Suda would be on Shabbos, right? And Matanos Lavyanim, they do on Sunday, something like that. Is that possible? Yeah. Chaliyes b'Shabbos. If it's on Shabbos, okay. 14th is on Shabbos. So we know what's going to happen for the Kfarim, the villages. They're going to read the Megillah 2 days before. That's going to be not the 13th, but the 12th. So Kfarim v'Yars Gedolos Makdim v'Karen Liyem HaKnisa to the Thursday before. Mekafos Chaima and the walled cities are going to do Lamachar on Sunday. So it's Thursday and Sunday is going to be Purim that year. It was still only the 12th. We never got an 11th yet. Chaliyes Achar Shabbos. Let's say Purim is on a Sunday. So then Yudalit is a Sunday. So then Kfarim Makdim Liyem HaKnisa, the villages go back to the Yom HaKnisa. They read the Megillah on the day when they go to the big city, which is on a Thursday. So that's going to be, Shabbos was the 13th. Friday is the 12th. Thursday is the 11th. And the big cities will read it on Sunday. And then the Shushan Purim will be on the Monday or the following day on the 15th. Okay, so we have every possibility here of 11th to 15th. What's going on? This concept of reading it on the Yom HaKnisa, we find like two concepts here. One is that we make it convenient on the villagers that they don't have to come a third time that week. They don't have to come on the Tuesday, on the Wednesday to be able to hear the Megillah. Maybe there's no one in their town that's going to read it. So for convenience for them, they can do it on Monday and Thursday, as long as it's before Purim. They can never go after Purim. They can never do it later, but they can always do it earlier. Another thing that we're about to find is that they also wanted that they should be available on Purim to be able to supply food to the cities. Now that's a little strange. I'm not sure how to reconcile the two. If there's let's see what the Gemara says. Megillah Nikras Biyad Aleph Minolan. How do you know that the Megillah could be read on the 11th? The Gemara says Minolan. You're asking from where do you know? But the Gemara's question is, it's like a shock that the Gemara even had a question. That's a little bit of a surprise because the Gemara does this all the time. It asks from where do you know, and we find the source. So the Gemara's surprise is we're going to explain that the sages were lenient on the villages, that they should be able to read the Megillah on the day when they come to the city anyway, which is the Monday and the Thursday. They should be able to supply water and food to their brothers in the cities. Now, I would have liked that to mean that they come into the cities on the day of the gathering, Yom HaKnisa, on the Mondays and Thursdays. And when they come anyway, that's when they're going to hear the Megillah. That's what I would have liked it to mean. The problem is Rashi seems to say, Kadesh Yaspiku, that they should be free on Purim to be able to supply. So they get the Megillah read earlier, and then on Purim they're free to be able to supply food to the people in the city. It sounds like they're coming again to the city. I know, but that's not the way we were understanding it. We were understanding that we didn't make them come to the city twice or 3 times. They come Monday, Thursday, they have to come Wednesday also, Tuesday. But it sounds like that we want them to be available, to be able to bring food, so we don't have them read the Megillah on that day. I thought it was the Schlep issue.
The 14th of Adar was when Haman casted lots, no? Or was that a different? Like, what happened? Like,
that was the war was on the 13th.
Okay.
And then they rested on the 14th.
Mm-hmm.
And in Shushan, the war was on the 1 extra day, and then they rested on the 15th. And so that's the celebration. Now we're discussing how do we commemorate that by reading the Megillah and the Suda and all of that. So it turns out that there are certain times that we don't actually read the Megillah on the day itself because of convenience.
Right.
Do it earlier.
Could it be that they'll provide services in their own city?
Yeah, the problem is it says Lebnei Ayaris. Ayaris sounds like the actual city. Yeah, unless someone has a note in the Gemara that explains this, I don't know. Okay. What we're asking, but what the Gemara is asking is what's the source that you can read it on the 11th? And the Gemara is surprised that we're even asking that because we know the reason that they're supposed to be able to supply food to their brothers in the cities. So the Gemara explains the question. Anan hachi kamrinan. This is what we're saying. Michti. We're going to explain the question. Kulu anshe knesset gdola takninu. It has to be that the institution of reading the Megillah is said by the anshe knesset gdola. You see, Megillah is it biblical that we have to read the Megillah? Well, it's in the Tanakh. Because the Megillah is in the Tanakh, but it's not in the Chumash. So it was instituted by the men of the Great Assembly, Anshe Knesset Gdola. It's from the prophets. So, they were the prophets, the later prophets were the men of the Great Assembly, right? Like Mordechai. And so the days to read the Megillah from the 11th to the 15th, all of those were part of the original institution that you were able to do that. If you would say that the original institution is really only the 14th and the 15th, and then because of the situation, rabbis got together, they made this council, they said, it's really inconvenient, let's change the date. The rabbis come and they wouldn't change the date that was instituted by the Anshe Knesset Gdola, the men of the Great Assembly. We have a problem with that. But we have a Mishnah. One bezdin can't come and nullify what another bezdin has done, unless they're greater in wisdom and greater in number. So it must be that the original institution was from the 11th to the 15th, because if it was only the 14th and the 15th originally, then the rabbis would never be able to adjust that date. They're not greater than the Anshe Knesset Gdola. It must be that the original institution had in it that ability to read on the 11th and 12th and 13th. So Heicha, if that's the case, so where do we see it alluded to in the Megillah, in the text itself? So Amar Rav Shaman Barabba, Amar Rav Yochanan. We're going to have two sources here. We're going to have Rav Shaman Barabba, and we're going to have Rav Shmuel Bar Nachmani. Shaman Barabba says in the name of Rav Yochanan, Amar Kra, says in the pasuk, L'kayim esimei hapurim ha'ela bizmanehem. To fulfill, to observe these days of Purim in their times. It says bizmanehem, in their times. Zmanim harbe tiknu lahem. That means that there's a plural word there. It means there are several times. Zmanim harbe. Okay? So that means that they're going to have more than just the original times. There's extra times. The Gemara says, 1 second. Even in the original, the 14th and the 15th, you already have a plural. Hi mi baile legufei. It's already plural because you have 14 and 15. You have to celebrate the Purim bismanehem in the time. What are the times? Plural, 14 and 15. Where do you get 11, 12, 13? Gemara says, Imkein lemakra zman. And then you should just say zman in the time. My zmanehem, zmanim tuva. No, it must mean that's more than that. But it's 2 times. How could zman help? Maybe what we would do is we would say,
It's true. 2 times celebrated for people in different areas, and one in a city and one in a village, or is it like outside of Eretz Yisrael kind of thing? Or
no, the 2 times to do it would be on the 14th.
14th and 15th. No?
14th, it's done in every city.
Mhm.
And the 15th is only done in cities that are surrounded by a wall from the days of Yeshua ben Nun, and if you happen to end up in Shushan itself.
Mhm.
So, but that's already 2 times. How could Zman work? L'kayim esimei hapurim eila. The Gemara is going to ask the question, but how does it like get by with just this suggestion? The Gemara asks straight away. But we have a problem that the Shushan Purim is not in the same time as the regular Purim. So you can't just say Zman. So the Gemara says, Imkein lemakra zmanam. Zmanam, their time. Zmanam, their time. In their time. That means this is like confusing. This is like object and subject. In their time. My zmanehem. What does it mean? Their times. So shamat minakulu. I think it's called like compound plural or something. Where you have the plural on.
You could say their sons or their son.
Right.
So this is their.
The professor saying their son or their sons. Okay. So zmanehem shamat minakulu. So okay. Zmanehem is telling me that there's more than just the original time of 14, 15. There's also their times. They have extra times to do it. Well, Ema Zmanim Tuva. How do you know that it's only 11th to the 15th? Maybe Zmanehem is telling me, I don't know, they have the whole month. Like maybe it's much more than that. Well, the Gemara says Zmanehem Demid Zmanam. When we add, we're going to add what we had similar originally. So what did we have originally? We had 2 days. Now we have Zmanehem, their times. They'll have an extra 2 days. Ma Zmanam Trey, just like originally their times were 2, the 14th and the 15th. Af Zmanehem Trey. Also their times would be an extra 2. Because their times would be, now we have 4 days. Now the problem is, what is the 4 days? That would be 12, 13, 14, 15. Where's the 11th? Ve'ima tracer tleiser. Maybe that's only the 12th and the 13th. Umar says, Kedam Rab Shmuel bar Reb Yitzchak. Shmuel bar Reb Yitzchak says, Yud Gimel Zman Kil Lakolhi. The 13th was a day of gathering for everyone. That does not need a pasuk. That does not need to be included. The 13th, we would know that was the day of the battle. We would know if someone would celebrate then, it would be fine. So when we're adding on an extra time, we're adding on the 11th and 12th.
Yeah. So the battle was on the 13th.
The battle was on the 13th.
It was
Yeah.
over.
That was the day that was decreed, right? That Haman, the lottery came out on the 13th.
Yeah. Yeah. Zman Kila probably means that it was a time when everyone gathered to fight. Right. That was the Ikar Anes. So we would know that if you would celebrate then, commemorating the Ikar Anes, commemorating the holiday on the 13th, you would have fulfilled your obligation. The 14th was the dedicated day, and the 15th was dedicated for Shushan. But we would know that you would fulfill the obligation on the. Go ahead.
We never had it in the past.
I don't know. I ordered. Okay, we'll have extra then when they arrive. Okay. Yeah, that's what Gemara's gonna ask. Yeah. So Hachanami Yud Gimel Zman Kilakol, just like Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak said that the 13th was the day of gathering, so you would have fulfilled the obligation then anyway. So and it doesn't need a pasuk. So therefore, what do I have the extras manihem? That's telling me 11, 12, 13 I don't need a pasuk for, and 14, 15. Okay. Ve'ima shitsar v'shivsar. That's a 16 and 17. Shis asar, right? 6 and 10. Maybe it's 16 and 17. The Gemara says no. Layavar. Pasuk says that this shouldn't pass by. That this is the day to celebrate, and it shouldn't. You shouldn't pass over it. That means that it has to be before if you're going to do it. Yeah. Yeah, it's like your taxes. You can do them early, right? But not late. You can do it late. Okay. Special permission. Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Kra Kayamim Asher Nachabem Yehudim Yamim Kiyamim LaRabbi Yud Aleph Yud Beis. Our first shot was Reb Shaman bar Abba Amar Rab Yechanan, and he learns from the words Manehem. Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani says, we learn from the word Yamim. Like the days that the Jewish people rested from their enemies. Now, how many days was that? 2 days. They rested. They rested on the 14th. They rested on the 15th. So, like those days, we have another. That's when Kayamim, like those days. L'Rabbi Yud Aleph Yud Beis. It's coming to include that you have the 11th and the 12th. Ve'ema Tresar Utleisar. Maybe it's the 13th. Maybe it's the 12th and the 13th. Exactly the same Gemara that we asked before, but before we asked it on Rav Shaman bar Abba. Now we're asking on Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, which says the same thing, just uses a different pasuk. Amar Shmuel bar Yitzchak, probably. Yud Gimel Zman Kilakol. The 13th doesn't need a pasuk. That was the day when they gathered anyway. Lakoli, I don't need a pasuk for that. Okay, Ve'ima Shitsar v'Shivsar. Maybe it's the 16th and the 17th. The same question we asked before. Gemara says, no. It says that you can't pass by, you can't pass over. It has to be before. The Gemara now says, Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani, my time mibizmanehem. Why doesn't he accept Reb Shaman bar Abba's pshat? It says, Zmanam zmanehem le'mashmalei. It doesn't explain what the issue is here, but he doesn't think that the term Zman is enough of a limud. Says their times doesn't really tell him that it's all those extra times. What is it? What is he saying? That he doesn't accept the compound plural? Doesn't explain. Okay. What about the other way? Reb Shaman bar Abba, my time mi kiyamim. Why doesn't Reb Shaman bar Abba learn from what Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani says, that it says like the days, and that means that we should have another time that's just like the original days. That's not talking about giving you an extra 2 days or 3 days to be able to read the Megillah. That's talking about that you celebrate future generations like the days that it was originally. It's not that you have an extra 2 days to celebrate. You celebrate now like the days that it was then. L'dairis, that's for future generations. It's not giving you the week there to celebrate. Amar Rabba bar Chana Amar Rab Yechanan. Rabba bar Chana says in the name of Rab Yechanan that this whole discussion here that we said that you have from the 11th until the 15th to read the Megillah Zudivi Rabbi Akiva Stimta. That's the words of Rabbi Akiva Stimta. Stimta means anonymous. That a lot of the Mishnayos are said in the name of Rabbi Akiva, or his students, possibly, that were also anonymous, that said it in his name. However, Zudivi Rabbi Akiva Stimta, the Darish Zmanam Zmanehem, that learns that you can see that there's more time to read the Megillah from the word Zmanehem. Could have said Zman. Instead it says, and it could have said Zmanam, but it doesn't do that. It says Zmanehem to teach me that you have extra days. But Chacham say, in Karen I sell Bizmana. Chacham say you only read it in its time. The whole Mishnah disappears, according to the Chachamim. You don't have 11, 12, 13. You only have 14, 15, according to the Chachamim. Yeah. Someone misses the first day of Masechta Megillah. Don't worry about it. According to the Chachamim, that doesn't exist.
But it says, doesn't it say in the actual text itself, their times, plural?
Yeah. So the Chachamim say that it doesn't mean that there's extra times. It means on the 13th and on the 14th and the 15th.
What does it say in the plus?
Again, I'd like to.
It says Lakayim Esimei Purim Eila Bismanehem, to fulfill these days of the Purim Bismane in their time. The Gemara has a question now. Meisvei. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Emasai. When do we say that you have all of these times for 11, 12, 13, 14, 15? Bisman Shashanim Ketikunim. That's when the years are set up where we have the Bezdin, and people come and testify. Yisrael Shriyim Anad Masam. The Jewish people are living on their land. But nowadays it's different. Since they look at it, it's a few pshatim here what it means. One of the pshatim is because they look at Purim, and Purim tells them that time to get ready for Pesach. Start cleaning. Get rid of those hamantash and crumbs.
Yeah.
So, how do they know when Pesach is? I said, well, it's going to be, is it 29 days? 29 days after, well, it's the 15th. So it's 30 days after Purim. So that's going to be a problem if they read the Megillah on the 11th. Why? Because they're going to think Pesach started early, which means it's going to end early, which means at the end of Pesach, they're going to be eating chametz if we mess up their calculations. So what do you mean Pesach was Purim was on a Monday, it wasn't on a Wednesday. It's all going to be confusing to them. So therefore, we don't adjust the day of Purim. In Karnes el Bismana. Now the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda Ali b'deman. Who's Rabbi Yehuda following? If he's following Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva said that this Mishnah is still in observance. We still celebrate 11, 12. Elalav, liba derabanan. It must be the rabbis that say that they don't learn zman, zmanam, zmanehem, that you only have the two times. Now we have a question. Ubizman shashanim ketiknan v'yisrael shiyam ad masmiya karinan. But apparently, at a different era, they would be doing it on different days. So who does this go like? Rabbi Kiva says we still do it. The Rabbanan say we never did it. So who does Rabbi Yehuda go like that we used to, and now we stop? Well, it's Yufta de Rabbi Yechanan. It's a kasha on Rabbi Yechanan. It's a kasha on Rabbi Yechanan that says that the Chachamim argue 100% on Rabbi Akiva. Because we have a brisa here that says that nowadays we don't, but originally we did. Yeah, Rabbi Yechanan is an Amira, and we quoted a brisa. The brisa says that that we still learned from Zmanehem. We just don't do it nowadays because of a secondary problem. Ikadamri, there are those that said this slightly different, and with this difference, everything fits in much better. Amar Rabba Bar Bachana Amar Rabbi Yochanan Zu Divrei Rabbi Akiva Stimta. Rabba Bar Bachana says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that you're right. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says it's anonymous, but it's Rabbi Akiva. Where Rabbi Akiva says that you have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 to read the Megillah. But the Chachamim say Bizmana Zeh Hayil Mistaklin Ba Ein Karnas El Bizmana. Notice what the Brisa just skipped. It didn't say, but the Chachamim don't learn from Zmaneihem. It didn't say that. It says, but the Chachamim say nowadays don't do it. It's only nowadays. Tanya Nami Hachi. We also have a Brisa that supports this. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Masai Bizman Shashan Kitikunam Yisrael Shreim Alad Masam. When do we say that you have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15? That's only originally when the messengers would go for Nisan and they would announce and tell people when Pesach is. But nowadays, when people are relying on when Purim is to figure out when Pesach is, then you can only read the Megillah on Yudalid or Tesvav.
But Rabbi, what about the other mitzvahs of Purim? Well, when would they be done for the villagers?
The Gemara is going to discuss how to fulfill those. There is one other point here. When it says Hayil v'akol mistaklin, Rabbeinu Chananel, I noticed on the next page, he has a different shot. He says, Aval chachamim b'zman hazeh hayil mistaklin ba. His comment is, Ha'evyonim mistaklin b'kriyas Megillah. The poor people, they wait for the reading of the Megillah, and they expect that they're going to get money for Purim in Matanis. So therefore, they're going to be let down. They're going to read the Megillah, and there's going to be no money coming. So what's going on? You take the kids to shul. There's no kiddush. What happened? I thought that there was going to be candies. Yeah. So everything was on a different day. Now, I saw one of the commentaries say that so let them save the. What would happen over here? Maybe what's going to happen is that by the Kriyas Megillah, they're going to get their food, but they're going to end up eating it before the Sudas Purim, which is like 2 days later. So then they won't have food for Purim, which could be also an issue. In other words, the way we were learning was like Rashi, that everyone's going to mess up Pesach because they're going to look at Purim. But there are other pshatim here that it's going to mess up Purim. Why are we going to mess up Pesach? Because they're going to miscalculate. They're going to think that Pesach is 4 weeks after Purim.
Did we already establish in Rosh Hashanah that we didn't go out?
Yeah, but that's only when there was a Mekachin al Piariya and all of that. But nowadays, people we don't have messengers that are going to all countries. So people are just going to rely on when Purim was. They're just going to know, well, in my town, they made Purim on a Monday. So it's 4 weeks later, it's going to be Pesach.
But what happens in the interim when they have Rosh Chodesh? Did we do Rosh Chodesh?
Yeah.
Host.
Yeah, they didn't really. It was in a small town. Rosh Chodesh didn't really. Yeah, the ladies aren't going to push the dryer, the button on the dryer. Yeah. Yeah. Moshe is asking an interesting question. Moshe Pekar, the celebrity. He says, but the miracle of Purim was on a specific day. Now we're just doing it on the 11th, 12th, 13th. Well, 11th and 12th is the Chiddush. The 13th was part of the miracle. 14th and 15th was the day that was established. But how do we get to 11th and 12th? Yeah.
Oh, Queen Esther was fasting on those days. She fasted for 3 days.
That was by the meal, which was on Pesach, I think. Yeah.
Also, why do we do the fast of Esther?
That's a very good
Right
question, but possibly because of the battle. When people went to battle, they would fast. Yeah.
Oh, so that's why. So then
Yeah, so
They
why
were
is it called the
fasting.
fast of Esther if it should be the fast of the soldiers? It's a big discussion. Yeah. Esther fasted for 3 days, but that wasn't 11th, 12th, and 13th. That was when before she went into the meal with Achashverosh, which was much earlier. Right? Yeah, for marketing purposes, the doctor says we call it fast of Esther. Okay. Ravashi Kashle. Ravashi has a question. Kashle de Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda. It's a question, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yehuda. Excuse me, 1 second. Just
Don't take a coffee. It's too late.
Oh, it's late.
Okay, that's central too. Go.
Corn go.
It's just a lesson.
Did it start again?
I never watched it.
Did the third scene start? Just what shtisel, not shisel.
I'll tell you a quick story. Once Dr. Stein, when he was young, he went to the Cascos as a waiter.
Waiter.
$9,000 or the equivalent thereof this summer. How did he get so many tips? He was super
It wasn't
charming.
in the summer. It was
So we go to the ladies. We go to the ladies and say, "Excuse me, ma'am." They would say, "Young man, I like a grapefruit." So we go, "Excuse me, ma'am. What part of the grapefruit would you like? The juicy part or the not juicy part?"
No, the top or the bottom.
They would say, "What's the difference?" People would say, "Ma'am, the bottom of the grapefruit, all the juices go down to, and the top is dry. What would you like?" Get $9,000 off of this.
Okay. So Ravashi Kashle de Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda. Ravashi has a contradiction.
Messes up his
Mukum labraisa kerab Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara is going to explain what the issue is, but to resolve the issue, what Ravashi did is he says that the brisa is not really Rabbi Yehuda, it's really Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. And then the Gemara is going to say, is that how you answer questions? You just change the name, and it's not going to. It's going to end up saying that really he had another version of the brisa, and he just chose that because it resolves the issue. Let's see. It says, "Miyom Rabbi Yehuda bismana zehayil mistaken by inkarnas el bismana." Does Rabbi Yehuda really say that? That nowadays, because they use Purim as to establish Pesach, so you can only read the Megillah on the 14th to the 15th. Does he really say that? For a minute, but we have a contradiction. It says, "Am Rabbi Yehuda Emasai." When do we do this? That's only in places. When do we do this that you can read from the 11th and 12th? That's only in places where they would come into the cities on the Mondays and the Thursdays. But places where they wouldn't have that minhag, where they come into the cities on Mondays and Thursdays, then you have to do it in its time. Okay. But in places where they do come into the cities on Monday and Thursday, Mia Karinan, apparently it's acceptable. Even nowadays. I mean, that's what Rabbi Yehuda seems to be saying. Rabbi Yehuda said before that you don't do it now. And then he says, you only do it if you come into but he said you don't. And now he says, you only do it when, so there's a contradiction there. So he says, you know what? The one that said that you don't do it nowadays, that's really not Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, who happens to be his son, but that's okay that it's he doesn't say the same thing. The Gemara says, "Mishum the kashle de Rabbi Yehuda ad Rabbi Yehuda mukum lo braysk Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda." Is that how you answer it? We could have used a better answer. Could have said, one's Rabbi Akiva, one's the Chacham. Rabbi Akiva is the one that says, yeah, Sheni v'chamishi. The Chacham say that you don't do it. He didn't do that. He just said that I don't know if that's the Gemara's kasha. Whatever the case is, the Gemara doesn't like that it just changes the name just because of a contradiction. The Gemara says Ravashi Shmielei. Ravashi actually heard the Ikad like Rabbi Yehuda, the Ikad like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. He had two different texts. He didn't know which one was the most accurate. So the Kashle the Rabbi Yehuda, but however, he then had a question that it doesn't fit with Rabbi Yehuda. So Amar Man the Tani like Rabbi Yehuda lav dafka. The one that taught it that it was like Rabbi Yehuda is not precise. Man the Tani like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda is dafka. He figured out what's the correct version of this brisa. It must be Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, otherwise it leaves us with a contradiction. A way of figuring out which text is accurate was because of the question. Okay. The cities that were surrounded by a wall from the days of Yeshua ben Nun means the days when the Jewish people came into the land of Israel. So they read on the 15th. Where do you get that from? That they specifically then, it doesn't say in the Megillah that those days from the time of Yeshua ben Nun, that those cities read. It says, Amar Rava, possibly it's Rav, just different kirsa here. Amar Kra, Al-Kain ha-Yehudim ha-Prazim ha-Yeshvim ba'ari ha-Prazis. So therefore, the Jewish people of the open cities that sit in the open cities, they're going to celebrate on the 14th. Now, Mida Prazim ba'arba asar, because the open cities are on the 14th, Mukafin b'chamisha asar. It's the diuk. Open cities celebrate on the 14th. That's what you're telling me. Open cities. That means closed cities, walled cities are going to celebrate on the next day. Maybe what it means is that open cities celebrate Purim. Walled cities, there's no Purim.
Oh.
The Gemara says, V'lav Yisrael nenu. They're not Jewish.
Silly.
Yeah, that's like a theatrical question, it's dramatic. But it says in all the provinces, and we know from the beginning of the Megillah that it went from Haidu, Achashverosh's territory went from Haidu to Kush, so it's got to be including that. Okay, so Ve'ima Prazim Bar Basar, Mukafim Bar Basar, Uba Chamisar. Maybe the open cities are the 14th. The walled cities are the 14th and the 15th. As the pasuk says, to celebrate the 14th of the month of Adar and the 15th every year. It would be in the walled cities. You would have both. So the Gemara says, yeah, I would agree with you if it would just say the 14th and the 15th. The problem is, I don't remember, it's S or B'es, doesn't matter. But so S, Asa S upasik. The word S divides it up. That means that it's two separate times. There's a time for the 14th and there's a time for the 15th, and it's a different location. So Hani Barba Asar, Bahani B'chamisha Asar. The open cities do it on the 14th, as it says clearly in the pasuk. So it must be that the walled cities do it on the 15th, and it's a separate day, a separate time. Ve'ima Prazim Bar Besar. Maybe the 14th do it on the open cities do it on the 14th. Mukafin, the walled cities, Ibar Bar Besar Bar B'chamesar. You give them an option. You can celebrate whichever one you want. Amakra Bismanehem. Pasuk says no, in their times, which we said before, Zmani Shalzeh, Zmani Shalzeh. They can't do it on the same time. It has to be separate times. Bismanehem, in their individual times. Okay. Veima Betleisar. Maybe the walled cities do it on the 13th. We say Kishushan. Wouldn't make sense. We know that Shushan had the extra day and they celebrated on the 15th. So the walled cities would be the same like Shushan.
Wasn't the day pushed off so that the villagers could actually go in the cities themselves to celebrate Purim?
So the reading of the Megillah was done earlier, so the villagers could go to hear the Megillah
In the cities.
in the cities.
So if it's a walled city, that would just fix the issue, no?
If it's a walled city.
I mean, I guess
Yeah.
you could have cities that aren't walled as well.
The assumption is that they were going to the cities that weren't walled from back then, and then it would be a little earlier. Yeah. Jonathan is bringing up, let's say the city that they would go to was a walled city. Would that affect anything? Yeah. The Mishnah didn't mention it. That wasn't one of the options. Okay, now the Gemara says, Ashkechan Asiya. Everything that you just told me was only regarding that there's a Shushan Purim and there's a walled city on the 15th. There's a walled city that celebrates on the 15th. However, you didn't mention the main thing that our Mishnah is talking about, which is Zechira Minalan. How do you know that the Megillah reading, that the commemorating is on the 15th in the walled city? So the Gemara answers, these days are remembered and performed. There's a juxtaposition of remembering to performing, just like the celebration of the meal and the Matanos of Yainim is going to be on the 15th. So too, the reading of the Megillah is going to be on the 15th. Okay, for the walled city.
Doesn't it say somewhere that the cities that
Let's leave it over here. We'll stop here.
Thank you.